Do you have listings in your inventory that are just sitting there and you can't get a price reduction? In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what to say to your sellers to get them to change their price. Stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome back. Brandon here, creator of FSBOdomination.com. In this video, I'm going to show you step by step how you can get those price reductions when you have a listing that's priced too high so that you don't end up having too many expired listings. All right, so let's jump right into it. When getting a price reduction, no longer can you reference a price reduction that way with your client, with the actual seller. When you're having those conversations with the seller, you have to reference it as a price improvement or a price adjustment. So that's a quick note. Make sure that you reference a price reduction in our context with real estate agents as a price improvement or a price adjustment. So that's number one. So in getting reductions with sellers, the only way that that's going to actually happen is by setting good expectations up front with the seller at the time of the listing signing. And so when you take a new listing, you have to do what I call my one of three. And here's what it sounds like. When taking the listing, you need to do exactly what I'm going to show you to do. So, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, there's really one of three things that will happen when we hit the market. Number one, when we go on the market at X price, what we hope to have happen and what I anticipate happening is we get a bunch of showings, a bunch of activity on the property within the first week or so, which will cause us to get a great offer on the property. That's the first thing that can happen, which is exactly what you and I want. Number two is we go on the market at X price and we get a bunch of traffic. We get a bunch of buyer interest, but none of those buyers actually submit us an offer. If that happens, typically we're just off by a few percentages here or there from a price perspective. We make a small adjustment and have no doubt that the offers will start to come in. And then the last thing that can happen, number three, is we go on the market at X price and we get no buyer traffic. We get no buyer interest. If that happens, we have to agree that we simply missed on price. And if we missed on price, we have to act quickly by adjusting and improving our pricing strategy to all the buyers so that we don't run the risk of becoming a stale listing. Becoming stale on the market, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is the worst thing that can happen. Wouldn't you agree? And then you get them to agree. And that expectation is set right up front. So that now when you're on the market, and let's just pretend in this example that the average days on market in that area is 30, right? And so what ends up happening is if the house sits on the market for 40, 50, 60, 90 days, then you can call the seller back and do exactly this. So, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I just want to call and give you your weekly update. One of the things that we talked about when we put the house on the market is not necessarily competing with other homes as much as we're competing with our days on market. Do you guys remember when we had that conversation? Okay, great. Well, today marks the 91st day that we're on the market, and like we talked about when we put your house on the market, is the average days on market right now is about 30, okay? So we've been on the market for a lot longer than that. And do you remember what we talked about when we sat down the very first time? If we're on the market for 30 days, it means a couple of things. Do you guys remember when we had that conversation? And we're opening that dialogue up because if you've done what I've taught you to do, the seller's gonna say, you know what, Brandon, you're right. It's probably time for us to adjust the price. That is the key, you guys. The key is to get the homeowner, get your sellers to give you the words to adjust the price. The reason why we have such a hard time getting reductions is not setting good, clear expectations up front, and then we want to call them 90 days later and ask them to lower their price. Of course the seller is going to get frustrated. Of course the seller is going to get upset with you as their agent because we didn't set that expectation. So if you set the expectation right properly by using the one of three, and then the phone call later when it's needed, and the seller says, you know what, Brandon, you're probably right. We probably need to do something here. It's a lot easier. So again, that conversation is calling them up and reminding them about, listen, remember when we talked and we're trying to protect our home from going stale on the market. Stale on the market simply means, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, just like we talked about before, is being on the market for longer than what it takes on average for homes to sell in your neighborhood. And that's the worst thing that we can have happen, because if we go stale on the market, then all the lowball offers come in, and that's the last thing we want. Wouldn't you agree? Let's go ahead and improve our price so that we can start appealing to a brand new pool of buyers. Wouldn't you guys agree with that? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and make the change today. I'll send you guys an email so you can see the listing with the improved price, and we'll continue to move forward. And so that's how you are gonna be able to get price reductions that you need to get your inventory sold. So just to recap, number one, we're gonna set good, clear expectations with the seller at the time of listing, and you're gonna walk them through one of three things will happen. Then, if you are on the market during your weekly updates with your sellers and you've been on the market for longer than it takes on average, remind them of the conversation that we had before, protecting their home from going stale on the market. So hopefully this week's real estate training tip helps you. It helps you go back and do your weekly updates with your sellers, get your inventory reduced, improve those prices so you can sell out your inventory. So if this has helped you at all, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, as I'm doing these training tips every single week. I'm doing a lot of training advice in our private Facebook group, Top Agent Hangout, and if you'd like to join that group, you can click the link below this video and you can go ahead and join the group. We'd love to have you part of our group. So again, thanks for watching this week's video. We'll see you guys next week.